Sao Nian, do you want to understand the meaning of life? Do you want to really live? Yes or no? Early in the morning, Chen Xiaoyan, who had just turned on the computer and was about to play a game, saw this very middle two-like sentence on the login page of the League of Legends. Damn it, have you never read Infinite Horror? Such an old-fashioned routine is no longer used in Kidian's novels, but you still use it. As a Sudotaku, Chen Xiaoyan has 3 hobbies: movies, animation, and novels. And as an old bookworm who has read thousands of books and knows all kinds of routines by heart, Chen Xiaoyan deeply feels that Tencent is insulting his IQ. Brother Ma, please, you have to use a little bit of care in advertising, okay? This classic quote from Infinity Stream is really rotten. Angrily and helplessly complaining, Chen Xiaoyan immediately moved the mouse and wanted to cancel the login page. I'm going, what the is this? But just when he was about to fork out the game, the right hand controlling the mouse moved uncontrollably to the yes, just a little bit. Mom, it's actually true. His eyes widened in horror, and after shouting the last sentence, Chen Xiaoyan's body was involuntarily sucked in by the black vortex that appeared on the computer screen. There was no loss of consciousness in the novel. Chen Xiaoyan only felt that he was moving quickly in a chaotic and disorderly flow. It's not that Xiao Ma is not careful, it turns out that this main is really unreliable. In the turbulent flow of time and space, Chen Xiaoyan wanted to cry but had no tears. Countless shattered mirror images in the chaos traveled quickly, and the most important thing was that these mirror images passed through him from time to time. Having never experienced it before, Chen Xiaoyan really doesn't know how terrifying this scene is. But now Chen Xiaoyan is in it. Holding his head tremblingly, Chen Xiaoyan now feels that death is a trivial matter. Can it not hurt so much? Develop your brain and imagine that countless broken world fragments pass through your body, what kind of crispy feeling it is. Urgent notice, urgent notice. The space of the Lord God is facing a large-scale collapse due to unknown reasons. Reincarnation No 000001 needs to make an emergency landing. Damn, you are a fake master god. After Chen Xiaoyan raised his angrily in his heart and said this sentence, his eyes went dark, and he was thrown away by the chaotic turbulence. In view of the fact that the reincarnation loses its body due to the malfunction of the main during the journey, after a consensus among the administrators of the main space chat group, we hereby compensate the reincarnation for the chance to obtain a soul transmigration. Descent into the world. Please fasten your seat belts to prevent accidents from happening again. Come to this world, and detect the specific information of this world. Urgent notice, urgent notice. It is detected that this world is a high-intensity world. The main god's space is disturbed by unknown different dimensional energy, and some businesses are urgently suspended. Sao Nian, wish yourself good luck. All the administrators of the Lord God Space chat group mourned for Chen Xiaoyan for 3 minutes. Chen Xiaoyan kept sending messages from the main god's space in his mind, but unfortunately he was already fainted, and he didn't hear a single word of these words. If Chen Xiaoyan could hear it, he would definitely point to the sky angrily, and yell at this extremely good-for-nothing cheating god. It's just that now he only has a transparent soul left, without any sense of autonomy at all. Driven by the last bit of power of the main god, Chen Xiaoyan was sent to an abandoned orphan beside an unknown abandoned street. By chance, an old nun passed by this street, took the newborn baby and placed it in an orphanage affiliated to her church. Time passed slowly, and before he knew it, Chen Xiaoyan had spent 15 years in this world. Oh, no, his name is no longer Chen Xiaoyan. When the old nun brought him back, she gave him a special name, Patch Maiwis. Maiwis is the surname of the old nun, and the name Patch, I am afraid that only God, the old man, knows what the old nun thinks. It's a pity that the time travel turned into a soul wear, and he was powerless to resist Sister Maiwi's decision as a baby. It's just that every time someone calls this name, Patch always has an inexplicable sense of disobedience. Patch? Isn't this the other way around wonderful? With tears streaming down his face and speechless looking at the sky, Patch had no choice but to accept the name. After all, others have called it for more than 10 years, and it is impossible for others to change it. When he first traveled to this world, Patch was extremely uncomfortable. Because he is now in the United States, everyone speaks English, so when the priests and nuns in the orphanage talk to him, he has always been in a state of confusion. I am Chinese, so why bother to learn foreign languages? Instead of ABC, I will be my successor. It's a pity that when I was a student, I believed this sentence. Not only did I fail to succeed in the cause of communism, but now I become an American and an illiterate. After studying English for 3 years, Patch finally got rid of the reputation of being illiterate. It's a pity that the title of dementia came to him again. After all, other children can say some simple words when they are almost 1 year old. Patch learned English for 3 years before he gave up his resistance and spoke the first sentence of English to Sister Mywes. Patch still remembers the time he called out Grandma to the old nun when Sister Mywes was drying his hair that day, and how excited the old nun was. Master Magellan, Ms. Moss, come and see, Patch can talk, so this child is not mentally retarded. Mental retardation. Patch's thoughts and hair are messed up under the hair dryer. Please, I am a time traveler who grew up under the red flag for more than 20 years, okay? And it really takes time for me, a traveler who only spoke Chinese before, to accept English, a brand new language. In the shout of Sister Mywes, most people in the orphanage ran over to watch Patch. This child can talk, this child Patch can finally call me Grandma. Sister Mywes said to the others excitedly with tears in her eyes. My God, isn't it? Many people exclaimed. Little Patch, hurry up, call Grandpa to listen. Priest Magellan with a big white beard pinched Patch's little face and said with a smile. Cute little Patch, my sister has chocolate to eat. Ms. Moss, who is in her 40s, shamelessly took out a piece of chocolate and seduced Patch. Hello, Grandpa Magellan. Hello, Aunt Moss. Truthfully called Priest Magellan Grandpa, but for Ms. Moss, whose face was about to smile into a chrysanthemum, Patch changed the name he wanted to call. With her head held high proudly, Patch was unmoved by Ms. Moss' black face. A piece of chocolate wants me to call you sister against my will. It's impossible. Bring a box of chocolates, that's impossible. In fact, it took 3 years to learn English, and Patch really felt that it was very fast, but I don't know if it was because of offending Ms. Moss this time. Patch's name for mentally handicapped children spread throughout the orphanage. In the mornings during morning classes, Patch would hear Reverend Magellan lamenting. When going to the cafeteria to eat at noon, Patch would hear the cafeteria aunt sighing. In bed at night, Patch would still hear his fellow orphans talking. Honestly, Patch is actually quite handsome. It's a pity he's mentally handicapped. 15 years had passed, and Patch was already powerless to refute such words, leaving only deep helplessness and bewilderment. Didn't I just start talking when I was 3 years old? Don't I just stay away for a while now and then? Didn't I just sleep a little longer? You say I'm handsome, I admit it, but I'm really not mentally retarded. Patch is very handsome, this is really not a lie. Compared with other people, Patch's appearance is much more three-dimensional, just like a work of art carefully polished by European sculptors in the Middle Ages. Moreover, Pakai's figure is also very well proportioned. At the age of 15, he is nearly 1.8 meters tall. A perfect body of tendons is probably Pakai's most proud thing in recent years. Brown short curly hair, coupled with a pair of sapphire blue eyes as clear as the sea. Yu reading www.yuyuganshu.com. Walking on the street, as long as you are not blind, you should not be able to help but look at Patch more. Patch still remembered that when he went to buy wine for Grandpa Magellan that day, the salesperson in the supermarket gave him an extra bottle of vodka that was about to expire. It's a pity that he is mentally handicapped. In fact, Pakai didn't know what was going on with him. Since he traveled to this world, his mental state has not been very good. Occasionally being in a daze is still a trivial matter, the most important thing is that it is uncertain when he will doze off. From the moment Soulware woke up, Patch felt that some very important memories seemed to be missing in his mind, but no matter what, he couldn't recall those lost memories. It's okay to lose memory, at least Patch can accept it. The most important thing is, as the standard configuration of the time traveler Goldfinger after living in this world for 15 years, Patch didn't realize that he had any golden fingers at all. Apart from being more handsome, he was actually no different from ordinary people. And when he crossed over, except for a swaddle wrapped around him, there was no hair. It's a pity that when he first came to this world, he still thought about activating some kind of Niobe system or awakening some kind of Niobe talent. Let's learn from the experience of Long Aotian, Zhao Rishan and other senior traversers, and come to an immortal legend of conquering other worlds and killing all directions woolen cloth. It's a pity that 15 years later, Patch found that he was nothing special compared to others. Patch looked at the sunset in the sky with a pair of hazy eyes. Under the sunset, running was his dream that he could never go back. I thought my life would be so ordinary. Until this day, a strange voice suddenly sounded in his mind. The energy intake is normal, reaching the initial opening peak of the main God's space, and the main God's space is opening. The memory blockade is lifted, and the host's memory is initially transmitted. After finishing this mechanical electronic voice, Patch suddenly felt an unbearable stabbing pain in his head. Countless memory fragments lay in his mind. Patch felt as if his head was about to explode. 10 fingers in both hands were scratching his scalp tightly, and several raised blue veins even appeared on his forehead. The first stage of memory transmission is completed, and the second stage is started. A torrent of memories like a sea rushed to Patch's mind. If the pain just now was just a side dish, it is undoubtedly a real feast now. Patch clenched his teeth tightly, his eyes were bloodshot, and his 10 fingers were about to scratch his scalp. Due to excessive force, some hair was pulled off by him from time to time, but the pain on the skin could not relieve the pain in his head at all. Pain. This kind of pain seemed to be rooted in the bone marrow, and the unbearable Pakai's face gradually became hideous. The second stage of memory transmission is completed, and the memory transmission is complete. Ugh! Patch roared like a wild beast, and the endless pain that stabbed his mind disappeared instantly. Patch's head sank, and he fell on his back on the bed with a plop. I don't know how long it took before Pakai woke up faintly. What's going on? Shaking his head in a daze, Patch gradually began to regain consciousness. The special logistics personnel of the Lanbei Society, the cute little time-traveling assistant Augustus will serve you wholeheartedly. Do you have any questions about the new Lord God? Key mind rang. Rough? Little receiver? How the did I have such an idea? Also, the time travel assistant? The new Lord God? What the is this? Just when he thought his idea was unbelievable, a virtual panel suddenly jumped in front of Patch's eyes, which shocked him a lot. Do you have any questions about the newly promoted Lord God? They can answer for you. With a pink princess dress, waist-length braids, beards, and thick chest hair, a portrait appeared on the virtual panel, and the rough voice of Xiao Xiao sounded again. I'm going, King Kong Barbie. Seeing this scene, Pakai was shocked and couldn't help taking a few steps back. What is King Kong Barbie? Lord God, can you explain it for me? The figure that resembled King Kong Barbie asked with pouted eyes and pouted eyes. Damn it, I can't bear it. Seeing King Kong Barbie put on such a cute look, Pakai couldn't help shivering, and his heart was full of chills. The newly promoted Master God. As soon as King Kong Barbie's little receiving sound sounded, Patch ruthlessly interrupted, UF*CK shut up, let me stroke myself first. Pouting her small mouth full of beards aggrievedly, King Kong Barbie blinked a pair of moist eyes and looked at Patch. Turning his head in extreme disgust, Patch began to think of a series of things that happened before he crossed. Infinite streaming prologue on computer screen? Lord God space? Forced crossing? Emergency landing midway? Familiar fragments flashed in Patch's mind one by one. How the did I come to this world like this? Pakai couldn't accept this reality, stroked his forehead, and said to himself with great pain in his heart, this main is really a big pit. By the way, the memory is blocked. After the pain, Patch suddenly regained consciousness. It seems that I haven't figured out what kind of world this is for so many years. This is the major event that concerns his life and death now. It's just that according to the main god's consistent nature, the newcomer should not arrange any too difficult world. Resident Evil? Patch doesn't think so. It's been such a long time. In the world of Resident Evil, the T-virus would have broken out long ago, and he would have been lost, corpse, long ago. How can he survive until now? Ordinary parallel world? Pakai felt that it was even more impossible that the Lord God would be so kind to let the reincarnation travel to a parallel world to enjoy life. It's not that Pakai wanted the Lord God of Hay, because it was fundamentally not in the interests of the Lord God. Wrong. A flash of inspiration suddenly flashed in Patch's mind. What did that Vajra Barbie call me just now? New Lord God. Oh my God! Patch, who suddenly thought of this, was shocked. With his mouth half open, Patch slowly turned his head to look at Vajra Barbie, and asked blankly, what did you call me just now? The newly promoted Master God. What's wrong? After finally getting a definite answer, Patch couldn't help being dazed, and then there was an uncontrollable excitement. Labor and capital have become the main gods. Labor and capital have become the main gods. Huge surprise hit. Patch couldn't control his excitement, and laughed with tears streaming down his face. The golden finger of labor and management finally came, and it came with this big one. In Pakai's impression, the space of the main is much better than the long Aotian mode and the pretentious face-slapping system. Facing the brilliance of the morning sun, Pakai only felt that his lost dream was slowly running back. I'm afraid it won't be long before I will be promoted and raise my salary, become the general manager, become the CEO, win Bai Fu Mei, and reach the pinnacle of my life. Thinking about it, I really feel very excited. Just when Patch was developing his infinite imagination, Barbie, the time-traveling assistant King Kong, looked at Patch with a smirk and couldn't help being very puzzled. Oh, that's right. After disabling the masturbation mode, Patch suddenly thought of another question, and asked King Kong Barbie, why did I suddenly become the main god? I remember that I was not a chosen reincarnation before. And it still seems to be 000001. While talking, Patch suddenly stopped. Reincarnation no 000001? Isn't this the first reincarnation? Looking at King Kong Barbie's extremely tangled bearded face, Patch immediately felt that something was wrong. What the hell, I don't think things are that simple. There is definitely a shady plot here, and it's a big shady plot. Why don't you hurry up and tell me the truth? Alright then. King Kong Barbie responded with pursed lips. Actually, it's like this. Resisting King Kong Barbie's small voice, Pakai listened carefully. After hearing the specific reason, Pakai couldn't help but was about to cry. I knew it, I knew I must have been tricked. The previous main before Pakai was called Kai Beidayat Shanlovsky, and hearing this name gave me a very second-level sense of sight. After the second-year middle school boy obtained the main god's space, he worked hard for a long time to restore the main god's space to normal operation. Enthusiastically, he chose Pakai's previous life as its first reincarnation. Also known as experimental mice. This Kai Beidaya Shanlovsky used his extraordinary hacking skills to hack the big head computer of the XP system that Pizzy had used for more than 5 years in his previous life, allowing Pizzy to see the classic line of infinite stream. Then, Patch was forced to cross. But just after Kai Beidaya Shanlovsky used Patch to carry out the first time-traveling test, he was discovered by the Blue and White Society branch, an organization known as the Association for the Personal Safety Protection of Space Travelers. Facing the Lanbei Society, the most powerful force in charge of the two-dimensional, three-dimensional, and even the entire cosmic system, the hard-working former Lord God was caught without any resistance. The following is the final judgment given by the Supreme Court of the Blue and White Society to Kai Beidaya Shanlovsky in view of the fact that the new owner of the main space, Kai Beidaya Shanlovsky, used the characteristics of the main space to force the citizens of the Earth Federation to perform inhumane and unsafe travel behaviors. The following judgment is hereby made. 1. Deprive Kai Beidaya Shanlovsky of the position of the new chief god. 2. Kai Beidaya Shanlovsky will be sentenced to 91,038 years of fixed-term imprisonment, which will be executed immediately after the sentence is over. 3. Because Kai Beidaya Shanlovsky's behavior has caused extremely bad influence, hereby hang it on the bulletin board of the Blue and White Society for 18 years, as a warning to others. 4th, because Kai Beidaya Shanlovsky's actions caused irreparable personal injury to Chen Xiaoyan, Pakai, a citizen of the Earth Federation, the right to use part of the main god's space that was stripped off belongs to Chen Xiaoyan, Pakai, all for compensation. Yu Kanshu www.yuyuganshu.com Lan Mupi, Chief Judge of the Supreme Court of Lanbei Society. So, Lord God, you should understand the whole process by now. King Kong Barbie looked at Patch and said with a smile. I almost understand. But... Nodding his head, Pakai suddenly changed his voice. What is the right to use part of the Lord God's space? Master Lord God is like this. After the Lanbei Society stripped off the space of the Lord God, in order to make greater use of the characteristics of the space of the Lord God, it disrupted and split all the functions of the space of the Lord God. And Lord God, what you have now is only the two functions of skill exchange and the divinity attached to the name of Lord God. Skill exchange? The divinity of the main god. Pakai looked at King Kong lowly suspiciously. You can watch the specific content by mobilizing the virtual panel yourself. I won't say much about it. Besides, I've been in this world for a long time. If I don't go back, the president will probably fire me. By the way, the previous Lord God felt extremely guilty for the inappropriate behavior he caused to you. When he came to this world to give you the space of the Lord God, in order to compensate you, he specifically asked him to recharge you with 1,000 exchange points. Okay, the recharge of 1,000 exchange points has arrived, please check. Barbie King Kong, a special logistics member of the Blue and White Society who was anxious to go back to the business, stepped into the void, and gave Pakai a meaningful smile before leaving. I'm going back first, I wish you a happy time in this world. Thanks for watching, please subscriber. Thanks for watching, please subscriber. In addition, please collect and recommend, thank you, laugh. After King Kong Barbie left, Patch couldn't wait to open the virtual panel of the main god's space, and checked the two functions it said. A series of introductory texts fell into Patch's eyes: the divinity of the main god, the super-regular godhead formed by non-human operation in the endless universe. This godhead has two special attributes of the universe, time and space. The new main god's own energy specification will automatically open after reaching a certain level. Isn't this the same as the passive skill of a LOL hero? Why are you still talking about being so tall? Patch groaned, then looked down again. Skill exchange, all super character skills, mysterious side knowledge skills, extraordinary skills, technology side knowledge skills in the infinite world created by the main god. Since the previous main only created one technology plane, in order to make up for the new main god's space host due to the loss, the Resource Management Department of the Lanbei Society specially presented the new main with relevant skills exchange in the 4 plane worlds. All the skills in this function must be converted into exchange points with extraordinary energy. Please continue to work hard for the new master space host. This function involves specific plane worlds: Resident Evil World, World of Warcraft, Wizard World, and League of Legends World. If I go, there are only 4 worlds. After reading all the introductions, Patch was really speechless. Looking at the grey roof, he said weakly, "My pity that my dream against the sky was shattered before it even started." After a sudden sense of loss, Patch forced himself to smile again and said, "It's okay, at least he's a great golden finger. At least these 4 worlds are not as useless as the unreliable main before." "Hey, that's right." A flash of inspiration suddenly flashed in Patch's mind. He clearly remembered that King Kong Loli seemed to recharge him with 1,000 exchange points before leaving. "Hey, let's see what's there." Reaching out to open the skill exchange panel, Patch excitedly looked at the things displayed on the virtual panel. But before seeing it for 2 minutes, Patch was immediately forced again. Advanced Artificial Intelligence Red Queen, from the world of Resident Evil, required exchange points, 100,000. Mutated version of T-Virus, from the world of Resident Evil, required exchange points, 50,000. The Frozen Throne of Sargeras, from the world of Warcraft, required exchange points, 250,000. Treading Wind Fist of the Heavens, from the world of Warcraft, the required exchange points, 180,000. Heart of Doom, from Wizard World, required exchange points, 180,000. Morello's Secret Code, from the world of League of Legends, required exchange points, 200,000. After reading these things introduced above, Patch felt very helpless, extremely helpless. Looking at the long string of zeros behind these artifacts, which one of these items can he afford to exchange now? Pit hole. Tian Kang. Why are they all high-end artifacts? Why can't you get some cheaper things? Pakai spread his hands, staring at the virtual panel with a pair of dead fish eyes resentful. Alas, the revolution has not yet succeeded, and comrades still need to work hard. After saying this with a bitter face, Patch was about to close the virtual panel. But just when he raised his hand, a mechatronic sound suddenly sounded in his mind. "Sao Nian, as the newly promoted Master God, please don't be discouraged, don't despair. As honorable as I am, the previous Lord God, Kai Bei Dea Shanlifsky, has already anticipated your plight, and specially prepared a new gift package for you. You only need 1,000 exchange points to get the gift you dreamed of. Supernatural ability. Sao Nian, come and exchange it." The noble and great Lord Kai Bei Dea Shanlifsky. Patch's raised hand stopped suddenly in midair, and after these words were finished, a page suddenly popped in front of him. What? Patch couldn't help but stare intently, and read softly, the true explanation of Orlando Andres Googal's Wizards. That's right. What appeared in front of Patch was a projection of a book, and what Patch read was its name. It looks very awesome. Patch exchanged the book without even thinking about it, because he really had no other choice now. The 1,000 exchange points in Patch's personal account on the virtual panel were instantly emptied and returned to 0. At the same time, a book flew out of the void and landed in his hands. A strange black mist is wrapped around the black cover, and a vague human face can be seen looming in the mist. Not caring about these, Patch impatiently flipped through the pages. What is recorded in the book is an unknown language, which Patch has never seen in his previous life, but he can understand it. I knew it, there is absolutely no such good thing. After spending more than an hour briefly scanning the contents of the wizard's true explanation, Patch closed the book again angrily. Damn it, it's obviously an introductory book for junior wizards, so why the do you have to give it such a fancy name? Are you kidding me? Isn't it? Patch casually threw the wizard's truth on the bed, and Patch got up and walked out the door. After going to the orphanage's canteen for lunch, Patch was about to go back to his room when he was stopped by Priest Magellan, who was leaning on a cane. "Little Patch, come with me to my office." "Yes, Grandpa Magellan." Patch took a few steps to help the trembling Magellan priest, and helped him all the way to his office. "Little Patch, you feel very different to me today. After helping Priest Magellan to sit down, he leaned his stick aside and said so. Having just unblocked the memory of his past life for 15 years, Patch's temperament is indeed very different from before. It's just that although he was surprised by Priest Magellan's keen sense, Patch didn't confide much to him. "Grandpa Magellan, this is just your illusion. I am still Patch, nothing has changed." Priest Magellan shook his head with a smile, and changed the subject. "Little Patch, you will have to leave the orphanage in a few months. Have you thought about what to do in the future? According to the laws of the United States, children who grow up in orphanages must leave on time after the age of 16, and go to the society to find jobs by themselves, because in the United States, children who have grown up in orphanages can already bear legal responsibility at the age of 16. An adult now. And Patch is only a few months away from turning 16, which means that he will have to leave the orphanage in a few months and go to work in the society to support himself." "I don't know." Patch smiled wryly, and said, "Let's resign ourselves to fate. You can always find a suitable job to support yourself. Little Patch, it doesn't matter what kind of work you can do. This is a free country, as long as you protect yourself and don't endanger others, I'm satisfied." Priest Magellan picked up his cane and stood up, patted Patch on the shoulder, and said with a smile, "I will." Patch nodded and replied in a deep voice. In the orphanage, not only Sister Mywes, but also Priest Magellan, the dean, was very kind to him. This veteran who survived the fight against the Nazis on the battlefield of World War II has a very righteous life creed, that is, peace. The wounds left by war on the people of the world are not only physical, but also spiritual. Priest Magellan knew this very well. Although the United States is now in a peaceful age, crimes are still emerging all over the country. Magellan does not want Patch to embark on such a path due to his difficult life in the future, so he deliberately reminded him. "That's good." After hearing Patch's answer, the elderly Magellan could not help but smile in relief. "Grandpa Magellan, if there is nothing else, I will go first." Priest Magellan nodded slightly. But just when Patch turned around and was about to leave, he suddenly saw something that shocked him beyond measure. Turning his head suddenly, Patch pointed to a wall of the office, and asked Priest Magellan dumbfounded, "Grandpa Magellan, you reading www.yuyuganshu.com this, what is this?" Looking in the direction of Patch's finger, I saw a poster was pasted on the wall. The poster showed a burly man in a tight battle suit with blue stars and stripes and 5-point stars. His battle suit was the same color as the American flag. The man is holding a shield and posing in a cool pose. Captain America. What's the matter? Priest Magellan couldn't understand why Patch was so surprised, and asked aloud. Captain America. Captain America. Thunder rolled in Patch's mind, like 10 million guns galloping past. He didn't think that Reverend Magellan, who was nearly 90 years old, would be a fan of Captain America in Marvel comics or movies. So, obviously there is only one possibility. Captain America Steve Rogers is the spiritual symbol of veterans of our generation. He defeated the Nazis and destroyed Hydra. In that era, Captain America was basically the object of worship for ordinary soldiers like me. Little Patch, you've seen this poster countless times since you were a child, why should you be surprised? I still remember when you were 7 years old and swore you would become Captain America in the future. What Priest Magellan said immediately confirmed Patch's conjecture. Patch's mind was still dizzy until he walked out of the office. Borrowing the only computer in the orphanage, Patch frantically searched for everything he wanted to know. Captain America, Tony Stark, World War II Nazis, Hydra. What the here is the Marvel world? What the here is the Marvel world with Captain America, Iron Man, Hulk, Thor, these superheroes? My goodness! Patch was really speechless. It never occurred to him that he made an emergency landing in such a world. Marvel world? Are you kidding me? With windy steps, Patch returned to his room, covered his face with his hands, and shouted in great grief. But after trying hard to sort out his memories of 15 years in this world, Patch found that it was really not a joke. This is really the Marvel world. Pit. Unusual pit. For Marvel, this was the first idea that came to Patch's mind. Thanos, whose strength is estimated to be comparable to that of the Lich King Sargeras, Dormammu the Devourer of the Dark World who transcends the time limit, Odin who claims to be the King of God, and a group of Asgard's gods warriors. As for Patch, a rookie wizard who only has a junior wizarding book, oh, no, he can't be called a rookie yet. If these people pay attention, it is estimated that even a small bubble will be wiped out ruthlessly. Don't talk about these big bosses, just talk about the superheroes on Earth. Iron Man Tony Stark is awesome. The greatest inventor of this century, and a girl picker, with the head of super high-tech knowledge, and one of the world's largest industrial companies, Stark Industries. Picking up girls and pretending to be coercive is the highest state in life. The key is that people have the capital. Patch also wanted to, but only limited to thinking about it. Captain America Steve Rogers, the only successful case of the US military's super soldier program during World War II. Far beyond the physical fitness of ordinary people, he is proficient in fighting, firearms, and other skills. The most important thing is that he also has an indestructible sound-absorbing shield, which defeated the German Nazis and destroyed Hydra. Captain America is almost the spiritual symbol of generations of American soldiers. Competing with Captain America, Patch thinks there is still a possibility, but he has to wait for him to practice the true understanding of wizards for a few years before talking about it. Dr. Hulk, Dr. Bruce Banner, oh, let's not talk about it. If Hulk stomps on Patch by accident, he might be able to kill him. Etc., etc. Patch really doesn't want to think about it anymore. The ideal is beautiful, but the reality is too heavy. He was afraid that his spirit might not be able to bear such a painful blow. Just looking at the specific year now, fortunately, there are still a few years before the official plot begins. Patch estimated that Tony Stark was still wandering around the country picking up girls and having sex. What the is Iron Man? Tony said, I don't know. And Captain America should still be lying under the ice at this time, sleeping soundly with the Rubik's Cube in his arms. As for Thor, Hulk, etc., they are too far away from Patch, so I won't talk about it. But there is an organization that Patch has to pay attention to. That's the Homeland Strategic Defense Offensive and Logistics Agency, or SHIELD for short. As the largest organization protecting the world in the secular world, SHIELD is omnipresent and omniscient. Obviously, this is the last point that Patch should not ignore. Not to mention that he is a good for nothing now. Even if he has mastered all the true solutions of wizards now, he will definitely not be able to provoke SHIELD. After all, there are so many agents of SHIELD. Even after practicing the true understanding of wizards for a period of time, Patch may not be afraid of those ordinary agents. But Nick Fury's two aces, Hawkeye Patton and Widow Sister Natasha, are not vegetarians. Be Loki, you must be Loki. Hawkeye decided, at this stage, he should make soy sauce first. You can't make fun of your own life, can you? When did I get a few super artifacts and possess the strength to overwhelm the world? Patch couldn't help but started flirting again. More than 6 months later, Patch, who finally turned 16, left the orphanage where he grew up as scheduled after bidding farewell to Priest Magellan and Sister Mywes. Carrying a large bag of luggage and more than $1,000 saved over 16 years, Patch found a simple residence in the slum area of 13th Street in New York, and settled down on the spot. Hey, kid, put down your toys, I don't want to you. At night, in a hidden corner of 13th Street, Patch pointed to a white young man who was blackmailing a middle-aged woman with a dagger in front of him and said coldly, "Cloak man." Seeing Patch, the white young man smiled disdainfully, and said, "You Heidi and show transvestite, why are you bothering me?" Others are afraid of you, but I. There's so much nonsense, don't you know that the more nonsense the villain talks about, the easier it is to die? Pachi, who was hidden under the cloak, shrugged helplessly, and then walked over a distance of 7 or 8 meters to the young man. She patted his shoulder and whispered in his ear. Coma. With a plop, the young white man rolled his eyes and fell to the ground in an instant. Seeing this scene, the middle-aged woman who was blackmailed suddenly screamed and ran away in extreme panic. Am I that scary? Touching his face, Pakai murmured to himself in confusion, forget it, it doesn't matter how much, hee, let's see how much we have gained tonight. Smiling lasciviously, Patch then bent down and touched the white youth's pocket. Cut, it's only $283, how poor. Smoothing out the crumpled dollars, Patch counted the amount and snorted. You're so poor and your strength is so low, you deserve to be unlucky. Patch said with disdain after kicking the unconscious white youth lightly. Okay, tonight's task is complete. Putting the money into his pocket, Patch clapped his hands and said silently, teleport. With a sound of bang, a cloud of smoke appeared on the spot, and after the smoke dissipated, Patch had already disappeared without a trace. And on the other side of 13th Street, in a dilapidated hut, Patch took off the black cloak on his body, threw it aside, poured a glass of cold water and opened Gulu after a few sips, and then sat in front of the table by the window. Reading www.yuyuganshu.com. The Cape Man. Patch couldn't help sweating profusely when he remembered what the white youth called him just now. Who the gave me this nickname? You are rough, I promise not to kill you. It has been more than a year since he came out of the orphanage, because Patch has no high education and no relevant business skills, so those good jobs are not available to him at all. And Patch didn't want to do such low jobs as moving bricks, repairing roads, and being a cleaner. So after thinking about it for a while, Patch happily decided to work part-time as a temporary hero of the 13th Street office. Just looking for those robbers and thieves to do a just act of robbing the rich and helping the poor. Hee, although it is his own poor family that is helping. Patch smiled shamelessly. It's just that thanks to Pakai's hard work for more than 4 years, the law and order in the 13th Street district where he lives has indeed improved a lot. In the first few months, the police were very curious. Why have so many fewer people complained and reported the crime recently? It wasn't until an accident that the police saw the video recording Patch punishing criminals, and they didn't know the reason. It turns out that there is such a righteous knight-errant who fights crime and maintains law and order in 13th Street. The above is what Patch thinks. The real situation is that the New York police believe that Patch's personal behavior has disrupted their normal law enforcement and imposed illegal violence on citizens, and a wanted warrant is about to arrest him. It's a pity that the cunning master wizard Patch Mywees was not caught so easily. Isn't it just robbing your jobs and leaving you with nothing to do? Is there any need to arrest me with such a big fanfare? Patch pursed his lips and said helplessly, it stands to reason that you should also issue me a certificate of being a good citizen. Not far from Patch's small room, a black off-road vehicle slowly stopped, and the black windows prevented outsiders from seeing the scene clearly. Melinda. The white man sitting in the driver's seat called out to a slightly older Asian woman next to him. It can be seen that the Asian woman named Melinda was a little out of shape. She didn't react until the white man yelled a second time, and suddenly turned her head and asked, Coulson, what's wrong? May, you can't perform the task in this state, why don't we rest for a while? The white man Coulson asked gently. Anyone who is called back from a flight on vacation is probably going to be a little out of sorts. After Melinda complained, she asked Coulson, what do you think? Coulson smiled awkwardly, but did not speak. Of course he knew that the reason for Melinda's absence was not because she was suddenly recalled during her vacation, but because of something else entirely. It's just that in order not to stir up the part of memory that Melinda didn't want to bring up, Coulson chose to remain silent. You're really boring. After Melinda said this to Coulson, she shook her head and clapped her hands. Okay, there's no problem now. By the way, Coulson, what is the field mission this time? Immediately, Melinda asked Coulson again. Negotiate with a somewhat special person. Coulson said, and handed Melinda a file bag with a red cover. Hey? Level 5 Authority, it does seem a bit special. Melinda took the file that Coulson handed over, opened it, and read softly, Patch Mywes, whose parents are unknown, was abandoned shortly after birth, and was passed by Sister Mywes sent back to Paramount Orphanage and raised. I didn't speak my first sentence until I was 3 years old. Before that, I was even considered to be an intellectually disabled child. Ah! Patch, who was preparing for a big event in the outskirts of New York City, couldn't help but rubbed his nose, wondering, who mentioned my name? After a pause, Melinda went on to read, but after that, Patch Mywes showed extraordinary talent. At the age of 15, he taught himself biology and electronics, mechanics and other related knowledge, and also received a PhD in biology from Harvard University. I left the Paramount Orphanage when I became an official adult at the age of 16, and now lives in a rental house at number 198, 13th Street, New York, and works for Hammer Industries. 2 months after Patch Mywes came to 13th Street, the street law and order unexpectedly improved, and daily crimes dropped sharply. Then a person called the Cloak was discovered. Because of the Cloak up to now, 13th Street has become a forbidden place for New York street gangsters and gangsters. Oh? From this point of view, this Patch Mywes should have a lot to do with the cloaked man. Even if it's not him, it's definitely someone close to him. Melinda couldn't help but ask after reading this, Coulson, I admit that Patch Mywes and the cloaked man are really capable, but we shouldn't let us 2 senior agents carry out this task together. On a mission. After thinking about it, Melinda immediately added, and the title Cloaked Man is really low in my opinion. If Patch could hear such a sentence at the scene, he would definitely hold Melinda's hand excitedly, and shout excitedly, my confidant. Although it is very likely that before holding Melinda's hand, Patch will be thrown to the ground by her. You must know that as a senior combat agent of SHIELD, Melinda May is an extremely fierce character, which can be seen from her cold expression in the car from the beginning to the end. At the age of 7, Melinda May was specially recruited into SHIELD by Peggy Carter, one of the founders of SHIELD, because of her extraordinary talent. If you dare to call her that in person, you must be prepared to be beaten to the point of paralysis by her. And Coulson next to Melinda is not a simple person. As the right-hand man of Nick Fury, director of SHIELD, Coulson can basically be regarded as a role model for all agents. Later, he took over Nick Fury's position and became the new director of SHIELD. In Melinda's impression, the caped man who punished the gangsters on the streets of New York is really not particularly powerful. In fact, these gangsters are not strictly gangs at all, and at most they are more organized than street gangsters. Just a little. Even a retired US military veteran who is fully prepared can definitely make them eat badly. To use a popular sentence in Patch's previous life, Melinda just wanted to say, I can do it if I fuck. As for Patch Mywes, an orphanage boy who taught himself biology, electronics, and mechanics, although Melinda admitted that this boy did have some talent, it was only limited to a little talent. Inside SHIELD, there are countless cutting-edge talents like Patch Mywes, reading www.yuyuganshu.com. There are many geniuses who are more monstrous than him. Melinda had seen a lot, so she wasn't surprised at all. Facing Melinda's humor, Coulson smiled silently, and then said, let's read on. Okay. Although Melinda looked nonchalant, she didn't think that director Nick Fury would be idle, thinking that a neighborhood vigilante and a temporary employee of Hammer Industry could pose a great threat to them, so the 2A person, or a person at all, definitely has a special place that she doesn't know. Shaking her head helplessly, Melinda continued to read the content just now. It's normal, there's nothing special about it. Melinda turned her head and said to Carlson, leaving the orphanage at the age of 16, I rented a hut in the 13th Street. Others have dealt with or had disputes. The Social Security and tax bills are complete, and they are a standard good citizen of New York. If it wasn't for the cloaked man, there shouldn't be any possibility that such a person would be targeted by us, right? Yes. Carlson responded, and then said, a typical hidden incident, a young man with special abilities and a strong sense of justice, but unfortunately he still didn't hide deep enough, and was discovered by us in a recent accident some of his heels. If Patch himself were here, he would definitely helplessly spread his hands to Carlson, I'm not a passionate young man with a sense of justice, but I'm just too short of money, or you think I'm just doing nothing to help New York City. The police reduce their workload to do such boring things as neighborhood vigilantes. It's a pity that our senior agent of SHIELD, Carlson, doesn't think so. May, there is a video here, which was just recorded a while ago, you can watch it first. Just as he was speaking, Carlson handed Melinda a mobile phone. Taking the phone, Melinda glanced at Carlson suspiciously, and then opened the only video saved in the phone. In the video, there is a tall man in a black cloak and a white youth holding a middle-aged woman with a knife. I saw the young white man shouting a few words to the man in the black cloak with a ferocious expression on his face, but the man in the black cloak suddenly crossed a distance of 7 or 8 meters and came to the young white man holding a switchblade. Gently after patting him on the shoulder, the white youth immediately collapsed to the ground. Seeing this, Melinda couldn't help but stare at Carlson with wide eyes. Carlson smiled and nodded for her to continue watching. In the video, after the black-cloaked man stunned the white youth, he groped on him for a while, took out some things, stood there for a while, and then disappeared into a puff of smoke with a bang sound. Trace. After clearly seeing what was in the hands of the man in the black cloak, Melinda couldn't help crying and saying, I didn't expect this cloaked man to be such a neighborhood vigilante. Carlson said with a smile. Carlson had watched this video countless times before Melinda, so he naturally knew what the caped man pulled out from the white youth. That's right. That's a crumpled mess of loose change. Seeing this, Melinda couldn't help but exchanged glances with Carlson, quite speechless. Maybe this street hero is really short of money, so. Spreading his hands, Carlson shrugged and explained to Melinda. Okay. Melinda curled her lips helplessly, and then asked, no wonder this matter is set as a level 5 authority. This cloaked man seems to be a mutant, but it's not like it. As a field agent of S.H.I.E.L.D., Melinda has experienced many strange events that ordinary people cannot understand over the years, and mutants are a good example. Although the abilities of the mutants vary, and the weak ones are likely to be dealt with by an ordinary policeman, but those mutants who are powerful and unable to control their own abilities will undoubtedly be a great threat to ordinary people. Melinda, who has personally experienced a tragedy caused by mutants being unable to control their abilities, knows that in a densely populated city, where heavy weapons with great lethality cannot be used, these mutants can basically be called a human bomb. However, the ability shown by the man in the black cloak in the video is not the same as the mutant in Melinda's impression. This made her a little puzzled, so she asked Carlson. I don't know. It won't be confirmed until we get in touch with him. Carlson replied, glancing at Melinda. What is Director Nick Fury's attitude towards this cloaked man Patch Mywes? Melinda asked again. Yes, after seeing Patch's files and this video, Melinda can already confirm that this sunny boy is the caped man who has been active in the 13th block for more than 4 years. From this video, it can be seen that this cloaked man has at least 2 superpowers, the superpower of teleportation over a long distance and the ability to stun people. Let me call it that. Frowning and thinking for a while, Carlson continued, and it's clear that this cloaked man has a good grasp of his own abilities. At least I checked the files, and the street gangsters and gangsters who met Cloaked Man in the past 4 years are all it's just being knocked out and thrown at the gate of the police station, and the incidents of injury or even death are almost zero. That's not necessarily the case, maybe he still has extremely dangerous abilities that we don't know about. Melinda asked in response. That's why Director Fury gave us this mission. Let's investigate the danger of Patch Mywes first, and then submit an action report after returning to make a decision on the next step. Coulson explained. Okay, so now. Official action. With a gun in his waist, Coulson opened the car door and jumped out. After sorting out the equipment on her body, Melinda also jumped off the off-road vehicle sideways. The heat detector showed no sign of life activity in the room. After Coulson and Melinda arrived at the door of Patch's dilapidated hut, Melinda stuck a very high-end instrument on the wall. Go up, fiddled with it a few times, and said aloud. Maybe this big boy called Patch was out before we got here, Coulson responded. I checked the nearby videos just now, but there is no record of him going out. Shrugging her shoulders, Melinda continued, well, I admit that his teleportation ability is indeed very convenient. On this point, I agree with both hands. Coulson nodded and sighed, if I also have such abilities, I won't have to take such a long flight when I go out to work. Yu reading www.yuyugonshu.com and you can rush to the scene of the accident as soon as possible. Melinda added with a cold face. Apparently, after the heat detector detected that Patch was not at home, both of them relaxed a lot. Then should we break in now or? After chatting for a while, Melinda asked Coulson. After all, their mission this time was to contact Patch Mywes, but now that he was not at home, Melinda didn't know whether to break into Patch's house to collect information or go home directly. Let's go in and have a look. Maybe there will be some windfalls. Coulson replied. All right then. Melinda responded, and said, Coulson, get out of the way. Just as she was talking, Melinda took a few steps back and assumed a rune-up posture, as if she wanted to use her strength to kick the door open. No need. Coulson twisted the doorknob and smiled at Melinda. It seems that Mr. Patch Mywes, the cloaked man, never thought that anyone would break into his house. Showing a helpless expression, Coulson continued, because his door is not locked at all. As he spoke, Coulson twisted the doorknob several times in succession. Seeing this scene, Melinda was instantly embarrassed, walked to Coulson's side a few steps, and said with an unnatural smile, professional habits, just professional habits. Coulson showed a comprehending expression, then turned his head and unscrewed the doorknob and pushed the door open. A gust of wind came blowing from the room and Coulson and Melinda couldn't help shivering. But after seeing the scene inside the room, the two of them were stunned for a moment. Coulson and Melinda couldn't help but pause, and they looked at each other. Deep surprise was unreservedly revealed from their expressions. After being surprised, the two couldn't help looking into the room together. I saw a cloak as black as ink suspended in midair. That's right. It is levitation. Both Coulson and Melinda said they were right. There are no hangers for any support, and no wires for hanging. It is really suspended. It seems that Mr. Mywes is not as simple as we imagined. After sighing, Coulson strode into the room. If this technology is expressed in the form of technology, they can imagine how advanced Patch Mywes' scientific level is. After all, this is a technology that cannot be realized by S.H.I.E.L.D. today. But if it weren't for science and technology, then Coulson would have to ask Director Nick Fury to redefine the importance and danger of Patch Mywes, because this is obviously a special ability that they cannot predict. Don't talk about maglev planes, nuclear-powered planes, and other non-intelligent questions. You must know that this is just a cloak coat made of ordinary materials, not some aircraft made of steel and titanium alloy, although they don't know exactly what this cloak is made of. What material is it made of? Melinda nodded, apparently acquiescing to Coulson's words, and walked in immediately afterward. Out of the professional ethics of S.H.I.E.L.Ds field agents, the two of them carefully scanned the details of the room as soon as they entered the room. A single bed, a large wardrobe, a glass cabinet, a floor-to-ceiling mirror, and a desk, these are the 5 most conspicuous things in the room. It seems to be ordinary furniture, but some small decorations can't help but make Coulson and Melinda's scalp tingle. They looked through the single bed and wardrobe, but found nothing special. But the things displayed in that glass cabinet can't help but make them feel very disgusted. Dozens of glass bottles filled with an unknown solution are placed in a disorderly manner, and each glass bottle contains the same fresh human organ. There are eyeballs, brains, hearts, and various internal organs. Where did he get all these things? Melinda couldn't help asking. I don't know. Coulson responded casually. Through everything that was shown in front of their eyes, they can now fully guess that Patch Maywes definitely has many unknown secrets besides the file they just looked at. At least the human organs in front of them are extremely suspicious. Hey, Coulson, come over here and take a look. Unknowingly, Melinda came to the desk and seemed to find something interesting, and called out to Coulson, "What is this?" Coulson walked over a few steps, and saw a piece of brown-yellow paper and a quill made of unidentified animal feathers on the desk. The brownish-yellow paper is full of regular and strange symbols, but Coulson can't figure out what it represents. Is this a kind of writing? Coulson asked tentatively. Melinda took out an instrument similar to a spectrum recognizer and scanned the paper. After seeing the information displayed on the instrument, she shook her head and said, "Obviously not, there has never been anything like this on Earth." Similar text? A special symbol? Or a pattern? Coulson asked again. I don't know. This spectral literacy device can only retrieve characters that have appeared on the Earth. Symbols or patterns should not be within its recognition category. Melinda spread her hands and said helplessly. May, put it away, at least this is the harvest of our operation, maybe we can find something when we bring it back to SHIELD. Coulson told Melinda, and then began to carefully observe the room's other special items. Melinda rolled up the paper calmly and put it in the toolbox she carried with her. After walking around the room a few times, Coulson returned to the desk again. If I didn't pay attention, I might have overlooked this thing. Coulson bent over and pulled out something from the gap under the table. A small wooden box with strange patterns around it. The small wooden box was very light, as if it had no weight at all, and Coulson didn't seem to exert any effort when pulling it out. It's very light, it doesn't seem like there's anything inside. Frowning, Coulson picked up the small wooden box and shook it gently. There was no sound of objects colliding. An empty box? Melinda asked. I don't know. Coulson shook his head, and then said, we can only find out after we open the box. If the box had been filled with paper or stuffed with a very light sponge, we wouldn't have heard a sound at all. Coulson, but this box seems to have been sealed. After careful observation, Melinda asked an awkward question. After hearing Melinda's words, Coulson picked up the small wooden box and looked it over several times, and found that the gaps on both sides of the box seemed to be glued together. After coughing unnaturally, Coulson said, let's try to see if we can break this box open with violence. After speaking, Coulson grabbed the small wooden box and knocked it the floor a few times. But the small wooden box still has no trace of looseness. Let me give it a try. Melinda took out a seesaw from the toolbox and gestured to Coulson. Just as she was talking, Melinda put the seesaw into the gap in the middle of the box. Reading www.uuganshu.com pulls hard. Melinda wiped the sweat from her forehead and let out a long breath. Isn't it impossible? Coulson, who was sitting paralyzed by the side, couldn't help asking. No. Melinda shook her head and responded, the material of this small wooden box is very strange, I have never seen it before in my life. In the 10 minutes after Coulson proposed to break open the box violently, he and Melinda tried countless methods, but they still failed to break open the small wooden box. Smash it on the ground, hit it with a rocker, hit it with a hammer, or even shoot it continuously with a pistol, not to mention breaking it open, without leaving even a trace of it. If it really doesn't work, we have to take it back first and then think of other solutions. Sighing, Melinda put the tools scattered on the ground back into the toolbox, and said helplessly. From the moment she walked into this hut, Melinda had a very weird feeling. Not to mention those human organ specimens and strange symbols, it was a small sealed wooden box that she couldn't even open. This is abnormal, extremely abnormal. Well, it seems that's the only way to go. Carlson said in response. Wait. Carlson, who was about to get up, seemed to have noticed something suddenly. He pressed Melinda's shoulder and whispered in her ear, May, be careful, there are very few people here except the two of us. There may be a third person. Facing Melinda's puzzled gaze, Carlson immediately said, if you don't believe me, listen carefully. Boom. 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 The first two are the heartbeats of her and Carlson, and the third. Melinda frowned instantly, and her spirit was highly concentrated. After hearing this extra heartbeat, all the muscles in Melinda's body tensed up instantly. She turned over and took out the pistol equipped on her waist, held it tightly in her hand, and pointed forward with a flat grip. Cautiously squatting, Melinda scanned the surroundings extremely cautiously, in order to prevent the imminent danger. Carlson immediately pulled out his pistol, bowed slightly, and leaned against Melinda back to back. This room is very weird. Carlson said softly, holding a gun and staring at the front. Yes, I felt this way when I came in. Melinda replied softly, looking around cautiously. After all, Melinda and Carlson are experienced agents. If the third person had hidden here early, they would not have discovered it. The only possibility is that the person just came here. But in this unobstructed hut, that person was able to escape their observation and sneak in silently, which made them nervous instantly. This Mr. Maiwis is not ready to show up yet, is he going to be beaten into a sieve by us? Melinda said a not-so-cold joke. His ability to move in an instant, it is very likely that the bullets we shoot will not touch him at all. Carlson was obviously not as optimistic as Melinda, his whole body tensed, and he said in a deep voice. How do you know if you don't try it? Melinda answered. Without hesitation, they judged the extra person as Patch Maiwis. After all, after watching the video, they also had a rough understanding of Patch's ability, only his teleportation, the ability to escape the senses of Carlson and Melinda, and sneak in silently. It's just that according to the routines in movies and TV shows, and Melinda Carlson's personal experience, after they draw their guns, the hidden people shouldn't come out with their heads in their hands and shout I surrender, or carry a gun. Shooting submachine guns at them without any scruples? But now the script seems to be a bit wrong. Boom. 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 The heartbeat was getting louder and faster, even when Carlson and Melinda were talking, they could clearly hear it. May, this heartbeat is too abnormal. Carlson couldn't help frowning and said. Melinda replied lightly, it is absolutely impossible for a normal human's heartbeat to be so loud and fast. I have only seen this kind of situation on a big green-skinned guy. Hulk. Carlson couldn't help exclaiming, and then said, how is it possible? If that's the case, we are likely to be in big trouble. Of course they would not think that the Hulk was here, but such a violent heartbeat inevitably made the two of them feel terrified. Even if the person hiding is not the Hulk, it is definitely not human. Carlson, listen carefully. The sound of the heartbeat seems to be coming from the closet. Carefully, Melinda quickly judged the hiding place of the person through her ears and experience. Carlson listened quietly for a while, confirmed Melinda's judgment, and after nodding to her, the two began to walk slowly towards the closet. When the two of them were close to the closet, Melinda took a pose, and after obtaining Carlson's consent, she quickly kicked a ferocious side kick towards the closet door. With a click, the wardrobe door was broken into two pieces by Melinda's kick and fell to the ground. Immediately afterwards, Melinda and Carlson met eyes, quickly moved closer together, and pointed their guns at the inside of the closet. But what happened next left them stunned. Because the closet was empty, there was no one at all. What's going on? Melinda looked at Carlson with a face full of surprise. She was very sure that her judgment just now was absolutely correct. May, have you forgotten Patch Maiwee's ability? Carlson reminded aloud. Teleport. Melinda suddenly realized that it was very likely that Patch Maiwee's had already escaped by using his ability. But the next voice that came into their ears quickly overturned Melinda's thoughts. Boom! 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 The rapid and dull heartbeat sounded again, but the place where the heartbeat sound came from was still. Wardrobe! Coulson, be careful! Melinda yelled to the relaxed Carlson. Hearing Melinda's shout, Carlson's spirit was shaken suddenly, his attention was instantly concentrated, he quickly raised the pistol, and aimed it at the inside of the closet. The two approached the closet again, but there was still nothing in the closet. This is so weird. Melinda muttered something in Chinese to herself. She still didn't relax her vigilance, her eyes carefully inspected every corner of the closet. May, what are you talking about? Carlson couldn't help asking without hearing what Melinda said. Coulson, don't talk. Melinda made a gesture, squatted down, and looked at the bottom corner of the closet with her head tilted. When looking at a corner again, Melinda seemed to have some unexpected gains, and stretched a hand into the corner. May, what are you doing? After seeing Melinda's actions, Carlson couldn't help asking nervously, and quickly prepared to stop her actions. But Carlson was shocked by what Melinda brought out before he could stop it. Boom! 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 A pitch-black jar was held in Melinda's hands, and inside the jar came the rapid and dull heartbeat they had just heard. Carlson's expression froze all of a sudden, and he shouted in amazement with his mouth half open, "My God, how is this possible?" Glancing at Melinda, Carlson obviously felt her shock, and quickly squatted down, looking at the dark jar in Melinda's hand. The old jar looks like a piece of pottery. Reading www.yuyuganshu.com was pitch black with no trace of luster visible, and a piece of paper covered with strange symbols was sealed on top of the jar. It's somewhat similar to the brownish-yellow paper they saw on their desk not long ago. Nothing is impossible, Carlson. Haven't we encountered many strange incidents in S.H.I.E.L.D? After calming down, Melinda stared at the black clay pot and said aloud. After hearing Melinda's response, Carlson relaxed a little, but there was still an expression of disbelief on his face. Immediately afterwards, Carlson asked curiously, May, should we open it? Yet. Melinda nodded. She also wanted to see what was in the jar. Was it true that what they heard was a person's heart? Carlson, get ready, I'm going to open it. Melinda reminded Carlson, and then covered the layer of paper above the jar with her hand. Carlson hurriedly half-bowed, pointed his gun at the jar, and stood ready. Glancing at Carlson, Melinda tore the paper without hesitation. Boom! Boom! The unexpected scene did not appear, but Carlson and Melinda couldn't help being stunned after seeing the scene inside the jar. A complete heart was floating in the jar, beating and making trembling sounds. The blood vessels and veins of the heart were clearly visible. If it was just that, it wouldn't surprise these two seasoned agents. What really surprised them was that the heart turned out to be blue. Deep blue like the ocean. Who moved my heart? Who? A sharp electronic synthesis sound suddenly sounded behind the two of them, frightening Melinda and Carlson's semi-squatting bodies jumped up instantly, turned around and pointed their guns at the source of the sound. I saw the small wooden box that Carlson had just placed next to the desk opened automatically at some point, and a dim light glowed from the box opening. Who moved my heart? The sharp and piercing sound sounded again, and a silver-white arm stretched out of the wooden box. Melinda and Coulson glanced at each other. Before they had time to think much, they aimed at the opening of the box and fired without hesitation. Bang bang! Bang bang! Gunshots rang out uninterruptedly, and sparks shot out unscrupulously from the muzzle of the gun. Attacking first is always the principle they believe in, and it is also the way to solve the danger once and for all. But the next scene made the expressions of the two of them freeze for a moment. The bullets fired by the two towards the box were blocked by the dim light that emanated from the small wooden box before they touched the arm. The bullets seemed to be stuck in a quagmire in the light, falling to the ground after traveling for less than half a second. Human beings who can't control themselves, and decayed and antiquated weapons. The weird electronic synthesis sound rang in the ears of Coulson and Melinda again, and then the two saw a picture that they probably would never forget in their lifetime. Coulson, what the is this? Accompanied by Melinda's exclamation, a silver-white figure stepped out of the dim light from the small wooden box. The silver-white body is covered with mechanically constructed gears and chains, sharp fingers like knives, and a delicate face. There is also a silver-white metal ball floating above the head, which looks like a doll. That's right. It's a doll. Although Melinda and Coulson were astonished, they didn't think this doll-like creature would be harmless. Because just those 10 sharp fingers can't help but make people feel frightened. If this thing is placed in a densely populated place, both of them don't need to think about it, it will definitely be a murderous weapon. Moreover, the doll stared straight at them with a pair of blue eyes shining. May, don't worry about what this is, get rid of her quickly. Coulson yelled in horror, quickly changed the magazine, and shot at the doll in front of him one after another. Melinda's reaction was not slow at all, and she was highly focused, aiming the gun at the silver-white doll, and the trigger never stopped for a moment. But the familiar scene reappeared again. The bullets ejected from the two of them even touched the side of the silver doll, and fell halfway. May, our firepower is useless to her. After firing 2 magazines in a row, Coulson couldn't help shouting eagerly, but the firepower dared not stop for a moment. Coulson, we can't solve this thing, we have to retreat quickly. Seeing that the situation was not going well, Melinda shouted quickly. Okay. Following Coulson's response, the two began to retreat towards the door while shooting. Time ticks by, and the puppet is getting impatient. But before the two of them took a few steps, the silver doll waved its hand, and the metal ball on top of her head fell on the heads of Coulson and Melinda in the blink of an eye. Not good. Melinda's expression changed suddenly. Just when she was about to turn over and flee, an inexplicable suction hit instantly, and Melinda was stuck together with Coulson without any resistance. Melinda frowned. She felt as if she was tightly bound by countless steel cables, unable to move at all. May, we're in danger. Coulson, who felt the same way as Melinda, looked at the silver doll with strangely shining eyes, feeling extremely anxious. Killing is a fun game. The voice of the silver doll appeared in the ears of the two of them again, and the two also saw the doll begin to slowly walk towards them. Coulson, what should we do? Melinda looked at the silver doll that was approaching, and beads of sweat could not help but appear on her forehead. I don't know. Coulson said blankly, feeling a deep sense of powerlessness for the first time. Disintegrate you, reorganize you. The silver-white doll stood in front of the two of them, stretched out its hands after saying this sentence. Ugh! Facing the knife-like hands of the silver-white doll, Melinda's eyes widened in horror, and she roared unwillingly. Coulson, on the other hand, closed his eyes as if accepting his fate. And 5 minutes before that, in an abandoned factory on the outskirts of New York City, a dozen white men in black suits were confronting a man in a strange costume. Boy, hand over what you're holding, and maybe I can give you a less painful death. The leading man in a suit stared at the man in the strange costume and said in a cold voice. Hee hee, you really scared me. Patch said, pretending to be scared, as he shook his black wizard robe. You guessed it right, the man in the strange costume is Patch. In fact, Patch was wearing the most normal wizard robe, but in the 21st century, in the eyes of this group of men in suits, it was undoubtedly a very strange kind of clothing. Boy, don't challenge my endurance. Seeing Patch's appearance, the leading man in the suit couldn't help becoming angry, and said in a low voice with a sullen face. After the man in the suit finished speaking, everyone behind him pulled out their guns and aimed their guns at Patch. Seeing their actions, Patch shrugged, showing no fear. Patch's appearance made the man in the suit even more angry, and said sharply, "Boy, I just don't want that thing to be stained with blood, if you..." It's just that he was interrupted by Patch before he could finish his sentence. Oops! Pakai's brows were suddenly wrinkled, and he stroked his forehead and shouted suddenly. What's wrong? Are you going to beg for mercy? The man in the suit couldn't help jokingly said. He thought Patch was intimidated by their battle. I'm too lazy to play with you guys anymore. Turning his head, Patch glanced sharply at the man in the suit, and said coldly, this matter is over, and you. It's time to die too. Just as he was talking, Patch suddenly waved his hand, and countless black flames flew towards the group of men in suits. Ah! All the men in suits were instantly attacked by black flames before they could take precautions, and countless shrill screams followed. Like ants. Glancing at the group of men in suits who were swept by the black flames, Patch turned around and kneaded his eyebrows again, and said to himself in distress, it's really troublesome. Teleport. As soon as the words fell, there was a bang, a puff of smoke was generated out of thin air, and Patch completely disappeared in place. Inside the dilapidated factory, only a dozen piles of black ashes remained. Panic? Despair? Melinda and Coulson couldn't tell what it was like. They could only feel the breath of death slowly approaching them. Facing the 10 sharp blade-like fingers of the silver-white puppet, they had already given up any hope. But at this moment, a shout suddenly sounded in their ears. Oriana, stop! The sharp fingers of the silver-white puppet stopped abruptly less than 1 centimeter from their throats. Time seemed to stand still. After a long time, Coulson didn't feel the expected pain, and the sense of restraint on his body also disappeared, and then he slowly opened his eyes. The silver-white puppet's sharp blade-like hands were retracted at some point, and she stood quietly 1 meter away from him, and beside her stood a man in a black robe. Hey, May, are you okay? Coulson touched Melinda calmly. After taking a deep breath, Melinda responded, Coulson, I'm fine. But after saying this, she saw the extremely dangerous silver doll and a man who suddenly appeared beside the doll. You, who are you? Melinda raised her gun in an instant, looking at the man nervously, and asked aloud. Who am I? The man sneered, sat down on the chair beside the desk unhurriedly, frowned and said, I still want to ask who are you? Do you know that trespassing on a private house is not something normal people would do? Just as he was talking, Patch's eyes suddenly became sharp, staring at Coulson and Melinda, with an extremely unkind expression on his face. Master, I don't know when these 2 strangers broke in, and they rashly opened the magic pot for healing my heart. At this moment, the silver doll walked a few steps, picked up the thing that Melinda had just found. The black jar, said to Patch. Oh? They actually found your magic jar. Patch yelled in surprise, looked at Melinda and Coulson again, and said meaningfully, it seems that you shouldn't it will be ordinary people. Tell me, why did you suddenly break into my house while I was away? Also, can this lady put down your gun? I don't like people pointing things at my head, and this toy in your hand doesn't pose any threat to me. Suddenly, Patch added another sentence, and glanced at Melinda with displeasure. Patch's gaze was like lightning, causing Melinda's body to freeze suddenly, and the hand holding the gun dropped down in a strange way. Coulson, who noticed Melinda's movements, frowned imperceptibly, then walked up to Patch a few steps, and said with a smile. "Hello, Mr. Patch Mywees, we have no intention of infringing on your privacy. It's just that some of your recent special behaviors have attracted the attention of my department, so I came here to investigate your specific situation." Although he had just escaped from the feeling of death, because of the characteristics of an agent, Coulson quickly calmed down, and recognized who the man in front of him was, and said these words slowly. "Special behavior? Investigate me." Patch frowned slightly, looked carefully at Coulson and Melinda, and couldn't help asking, "Are you from the FBI?" Coulson shook his head. "CIA?" Coulson shook his head again. "Then which department do you belong to?" "I'm Agent Phil Coulson of the Homeland Strategic Defense Offensive and Logistics Support Agency." Coulson took out a certificate, then pointed to Melinda and said, "And this is Agent Melinda May." "What land strategy, what bureau? Can you say it again?" This was Patch's first reaction when he heard the name. Even though he was already familiar with English, the name of more than 30 words still made him. "My brain is a little overwhelmed." The name is indeed a bit of a tongue-twisting. "Of course, you can also call us SHIELD." Coulson said with a slightly awkward smile. "Shield." When Coulson said the name, Patch's pupils shrank suddenly, and his gaze gradually turned cold. "Hiding for so long, I didn't expect to be targeted by them." The full name of SHIELD is the Homeland Strategic Defense Attack and Logistics Support Agency that Coulson mentioned just now. The initial prototype of this organization was born in ancient Egypt at the same time as the famous Hydra. But the real creation time was during World War II. It was formed by Howard Stark, the founder of Stark Industries, Peggy Carter, the old lover of Captain America, and several other people. The Shield during World War II was just a symbol born to fight against the German Nazis and Hydra. It's just that now, the definition of SHIELD has become broader. According to their internal understanding, it should be a bridge connecting the known and unknown worlds, and an organization that prevents and protects the safety of the whole world. 4 years ago, when Patch knew that he came to the high-risk world of Marvel, he listed countless people or organizations that could pose a serious threat to him. And SHIELD is without a doubt one of them. Even now, 4 years later, when he has grown from a scumbag to a powerful wizard, Patch has never taken SHIELD lightly, because the ghost knows what cards are hidden behind it. Patch didn't want to make fun of his own life. In fact, when he became the street hero Caped Man, Patch had already expected that S.H.I.E.L.D. would come to his door, but he didn't expect it to come so soon. Patch tried hard to recall what he had done during this period. In his impression, it seemed that those few big actions did not leave any obvious traces. How did SHIELD notice him? Could it be that the men in suits I burned to death were found? Could it be that my transaction that day was photographed by satellite? Or is it? For a while, Patch had countless conjectures in his mind. Although extremely surprised, Patch's expression remained the same as before, and Yu Read Book www.yuyuganshu.com spread his hands and asked, "So, Mr. Agent, what do you want to do with me? I am a very law-abiding federal citizen, and I don't seem to have done anything to disturb the law and order. Our SHIELD is an organization based on protecting the security of the world. Based on this purpose, in order to prevent the panic of the people of the world, we did not inform the public of certain things. It can be said that SHIELD is an organization that runs across the known world. A defense against the eerie unknown. And you, Mr. Mywees, don't you think that you yourself are a very weird existence? At least in the cognition of us ordinary people." As Coulson spoke, he stared at Patch with serious eyes. Patch pretended to be puzzled and said, "I'm weird myself? What are you kidding? We're not kidding you." At this time, Melinda, who had been standing aside for a long time, walked up to Patch a few steps, handed him a mobile phone, and said with a cold face, "Mr. Patch Mywees, Please explain to us what is going on, what's the matter? Patch took the phone and looked at it. It was the video of him punishing a gangster one night, and searching for all the dollars in the gangster's body. After watching the video twice, Patch couldn't help but frowned. He clearly remembered that he had clearly destroyed all the cameras on the street that night, so how was this video recorded? Without thinking about this question, Patch handed the phone back to Melinda, pretending to be nonchalant, and said, "It's really cool, the ability of the cloaked man in the video seems to be quite mysterious, but..." Patch looked up at Melinda and Carlson. "What does that have to do with me?"